Hi there, it's Mr. Chapman again. This is with part 6 for returning information for parents and scholars back to TFS on the 8th of April. So, we are known as a school to be quite strict. Just want to remind you that we're strict because we really care about what happens to our scholars. We want scholars to understand that the reason isn't an excuse for what they have done, and we obviously protect this idea that everybody's got the right to learn and the teachers to teach free from disruption. If we want the scholars to make the very best progress, then behaviour has got to be excellent. This is a basic flow diagram that we use. Again, this is in the family handbook. So we have different stages. So stages 1 and 2 are where teachers would use their classroom management strategies. These would tend to be warnings, warning 1, narration. And the narration, what we want the teacher to focus on is how the behaviour can be corrected, or the behaviour that we want to see, rather than focusing on a negative. If we get to the stage 3, where 3 warnings have been given, the scholar will be parked with another member of staff. At this point, behaviour points are added, which you'll be informed of. If we get to stage 4, where, for example, a scholar answers back, then they will be put into isolation. If we see a scholar who's been parked continue to behave poorly in a parked room, then they would end up in isolation also. And unfortunately, there is a further stage where we occasionally have to fixed term exclude scholars, or offer a managed move to another school, or we take advantage of Folkestone Academy's internal inclusion unit for scholars who persistently misbehave or disrupt our lessons. It's a slight variation on it, so you can see where between stage 3 and 4, what happens is where scholars parked with another member of staff. Some scholars are parked in isolation, depending upon the circumstances. During COVID restrictions, we've had to change our approach to detentions. So in terms of homework, we usually set detentions for it, but we will continue not to set detentions for homework, but parents will be informed it has not been completed. If a scholar gets 5 behaviour points in a week, that's a half-hour detention. 10 points in a week is an hour detention, and isolation, any isolation event will be an hour detention on a Friday. Just to remind you of the days when detentions occur, we collect the data on a Monday, so detentions are run concurrently from Tuesday to Thursday for each particular year group. Friday is the principal's detention for scholars who've been placed in isolation. There's a range of isolation reasons that you can see there. So more minor offences, they get put in for 2 periods. That's 1 isolation event. Anything more serious than that could be a day or longer, would count as 2 isolation events. Be aware that the points-based system allows us to manage the behaviour of scholars quite effectively. So we have a system where scholars meet particular milestones of behaviour points or numbers of isolation events, we have things in place to assist. So pastoral call home would be the first point. The second point would be a meeting with parents and completing of a behaviour contract. Where we have excess of 5 isolation events or 30 behaviour points in a term, then we have the right to send a scholar to the internal inclusion unit at Folkestone Academy for a few days, or fixed term exclusion, and we will always have a parental meeting before scholars can come back to school. If we have scholars attaining rather high numbers of isolation events or behaviour points, then our first port of call will be to offer a managed move to another school, because perhaps we are not the right school for them. It's a reflection sheet that scholars can complete whilst in isolation to help them review and reflect upon their behaviour, and hopefully it won't happen again. The final point on this is just just to remind parents and scholars how important it is in regards to stopping the spread of COVID-19 to be really diligent about masks and social distancing. So when scholars come back, face masks now have to be worn in classrooms, corridors, and the other designated spaces. I think Miss Yates is writing a letter to you about. Social distancing needs to be observed wherever possible. And we have some issues, particularly at break time, around scholars forgetting, not willfully, but forgetting, around touching, cuddling, grabbing. And so these sorts of activities, we've got to be really careful that they're not happening. So again, we'll use a similar system, warning and narrations, and if necessary, the scholars will go to isolation and parents will be called about the dangers of this lack of social distancing or not wearing masks correctly. And just a reminder on wearing masks, this is some advice from, I think, the World Health Authority. So how we encourage the scholars to put their masks on. And obviously, the scholars will be challenged if we see these types of things around the school, making sure that we can keep everybody as safe as we possibly can be. Really appreciate your help on that. As I said to you, behaviour is exceptionally important in ensuring that the culture of the school is maintained and that the scholars in the school can be successful. If you have any worries about the return of school of your child, please get in contact with the pastoral team and we will endeavour to support as we always do. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.